Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'm Peter Crabtree, the principal investigator for the Best Center. With me is Ted Wilinski, one of our co-PIs from Milwaukee Area Technical College. And Ted has been very much involved with our work previously on the high performance building operations professional curriculum work that we did, the pilot testing that we did. He's been involved right along. He's also on the scheme committee currently. Paul Ehrlich, uh, president of Building Info,
Yeah,
Building
it's intelligence.
Intelligence Group, has also been involved. Sorry, Paul, with um, with the Best Center even before it was fully the Best Center. And I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about some of the early work that we did on this. And he is also on the scheme committee for the HPBOP certification and is much valued in this effort. Want to go to the first slide, Ted? So the goals that we are working on for this certification, we're trying to create a standard of excellence for high performance building operations technical professionals. We're establishing an ISO recognized certification. In other words, International Standards Organization recognized. This will be a portable certification that will travel anywhere. It will have substantial market value to employers, and we think that it will be very valuable. The goal is also to develop curriculum guidance for community college two-year degree programs and other training providers, and assist colleges align their curriculum with high performance standards. And this is kind of a crazy slide, but much of what we know about high performance, the work of high performance technicians / building engineers has been developed and researched within the past decade, within the past 10 years. The Department of Energy sponsored some research around 2010. They sponsored 3 major studies that were done, including NEEC's study, which developed BOC skill standards document incorporating some energy efficiency standards in 2011. And there were 2 other studies that were done that also helped document what people do in these roles. Prior to the Best Center, NSF, Laney College had a NSF project grant, and we initially did a large-scale study looking at the building operations field overall. A lot of it was secondary research that was led by Paul Ehrlich's group, and some of it was primary research. We did focus groups in various locations around the country with building operators and really looked deeply into the landscape. We also, with Angela Lewis and others, did a different process. We did case studies of what we viewed as high performance buildings. So the idea there was to, there are 2 basic strategies for getting at what people do in their jobs. One is to do what we call a DACM and a job task analysis, which is a deep dive with practitioners regarding their duties, knowledge, skills, daily activities. The other is kind of a anthropological approach where you go in and interview people in their job setting. And so these case studies that we did from 2011 to 2012 are that variant of analysis in which Paul's team went in and actually followed people, interviewed them, watched what they did, which is a different way. It's kind of an ethnographic study is what we call it, a different way of getting at what people do in their work. From there, and these are some other inputs into our process, ASHRAE Standard 180, 2012, standard practice. That helped us to define what a baseline standard of practice would look like. There's another very important guideline that was developed, led by Michael Bobker, ASHRAE Guideline 32-2012. Sustainable high performance operations and maintenance, a very crucial document that's very important in the literature. And finally, NREL led a comprehensive JTA, job task analysis, on building operations professional in 2014, which identified more than 500 competencies. And so, and we are building on all of this prior work. Next slide, Ted. So yeah, build on the prior work. We don't want to duplicate what others have done. Gregory Bateson's famous dictum, focus on the difference that makes a difference. So that's what we've really done with high performance building operations professional. We want to focus on what distinguishes that individual from the standard, from the ASHRAE 180 set of skills and knowledge. So we made several steps here. In 2016, we completed a DACM through Ohio State University, which really was the developer of the DACM process, developing a curriculum. That was a 2-day event with building practitioners. You can find that document in various places in our Best Center booth, and I think it's also attached to this session. We also completed a JTA, job task analysis, for HPBOP in late 2017. That is a longer process. That is like a 4-day deep dive with people who are doing these jobs or supervising people who are doing these jobs. We completed that in 2017. During that period, we developed a gap analysis between what we considered standard operations and HPBOP. And we began to run pilot incumbent trainings for HPBOP from 2017 to 2019. Those helped inform us what the curriculum could look like, what you can and cannot do with incumbent worker training. There are severe limitations for incumbent workers to get any sort of large-scale training. It's just not possible. They're on a pager, they're on the clock, they're pulled into crisis, et cetera, et cetera. So there are simply objective limitations. And that's one of the reasons why we focus so heavily on the 2-year curriculum, because we think that that's a better venue to actually address the kinds of knowledge and skills that we are trying to attain with HPBOP certification. We began developing the certification scheme in 2019-20, and we are now ready and poised to begin test writing for the certification examination. And yeah, go ahead, Paul.
Thanks, Peter. And Tedley, thank you. So as Peter said, my name is Paul Ehrlich. I'm the founder and president of engineering firm called Building Intelligence Group. I work very, very closely with Marianne Piet and her team at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, as well as with Peter and his co-PIs at the Best Center. One of the things that we've been looking at here is what's going on in industry, and I'm going to focus on some of the industry-focused issues here over the next few minutes. So we see a couple of major trends going on right now in commercial buildings that are driving the need for enhanced efficiency and professionalism and recognition of operations professionals. Some of these come from the need to continue to improve the efficiency of commercial buildings. As you're aware, buildings as a whole, commercial and residential, account for 40% of energy use in the United States, over 70% of electrical energy use, almost evenly split between residential and commercial. But they're a major impact on climate change. And we know that commercial buildings are not achieving the level of efficiency that they can be, that they should be. If we look at world-class buildings, we're not there yet. So the climate change events and the need for carbon reduction, and even the need for more financial improvement in the operation of buildings points for the need for improved energy efficiency. At the same time, if you listen to Bill Banfleth and John McComber and everybody else this morning, Leanne and others, we have this ongoing issue and need for more healthy and safe buildings. I have a discussion group coming up tomorrow afternoon on COVID and post-COVID. Boy, we really need to be rethinking what we're doing with buildings. And one of the things that we realize is that a keystone of all of these items, something that ties all of this together, is building operations. We can't be attempting to design buildings that are efficient or healthy if we don't have a way to run them in a way that is healthy and efficient. And that's a continuous process. So building operation is the part that ties all of this together. Ted, let's go to the next slide. Building operations is a very, very interesting practice. If we go and look at the Department of Labor, they don't even really recognize it as a profession, but it is. It's a large profession. Every major large building has a team of people that are involved in operating the building. And building operations is everything from energy and budgeting down to maintenance and operation of equipment, to making sure that systems are running properly, down to custodial, down to assisting people in the building with moving furniture around. It's a very broad area. But there's a couple of key trends, and as Peter said, we've done numerous interviews and studies and research documents, most of which are up on the Best Center site. But there's a couple of key trends that we see in the area of building operations. One is that we have an aging workforce. The median age of most of the people involved in this are in their 40s, 50s, 60s. They're at or near or beyond the point where they want to be retiring and leaving the workforce. And that's leaving a lot of new opportunities and a lot of new job openings that are coming available for people that need to have the right skills. These are great jobs. They pay fairly well. They cannot be offshored. They have to be done locally for the most part. As we look at new people entering this, we're expecting them to have greater and greater understanding and acceptance and use of technology. You're going to hear from a lot of speakers the next 2 days about some new control solutions and some new control routines and the use of fault detection and diagnostics. All these are technologically savvy solutions. So we need to be in making sure that people have those skills to use that technology. The challenge we have, and as Peter said, when we did these interviews, we said, how did you get involved in this field? And I remember an interview that we did in Oakland probably 10 years ago. How did you get involved in this? And the guy said, well, I had my degree in English literature, and I got involved with a local theater company, and they needed somebody to run the facility. So that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. Everybody comes at this from a different path. Some people come in it from maybe they had some expertise and experience in HVAC, or maybe they were a journeyman electrician, or maybe they came at it from another path. But everybody kind of comes into this field, and then the way that they learn the skills, the way that they learn how to make a building work and to keep people healthy and safe and to make that building efficient is what we call OJT. It's all on the job training. And you learn as well as the ability of your chief engineer to do the job and to teach, which is variable. Some people are great at that, some people aren't. So we have this big challenge that We have a giant variability in the skills and the professionalism and the capability of building operation teams. And we have a giant opportunity and a need to bring in new people to this field that are trained and able to operate at the level of efficiency that people are at today, but even better. So this is a question. How do we attract people into this field? Great job, pays well, can't be outsourced. How do we train them? More importantly, how do we recognize them so that they can become this next generation of building operations professionals? And this is where the certification comes in. Ted, let's go to the next slide. So the solution that we see here is focused around this concept of a certification for high performance building operations professional. So we have been working, as Peter said, we've been working to develop this certification. We've been building out the certification scheme. We've been we've been working to build the test. We've been working to build the process. And there's a whole intricate process defined under the International Standards Organization that we've been following to do this. What we need to do now is to reach out to students and potential employers to explain the process and the certification and why they want to vie for and take the effort to get this certification and why you want to hire somebody who has the certification. We need to promote policies that talk about the importance to help with this and to support healthy and efficient buildings. And that ties directly into the work that you're going to hear from the lab and from others involved in the BEST Center and in other activities. And most importantly, we need to be working with community colleges to develop and deliver the 2-year programs that get people ready to vie into this. So let's go to the next slide. So what is a certification? Boy, that's a confusing question. It's something that's confused the heck out of me, and I've researched this for years. We have certificates, we have certifications. When we say certification, what we mean is compliance with a rigorous, internationally recognized process. Technically, this is called ISO 17024. It is a globally accepted practice for how you go about doing this. And it's a book that tells you how to do it. But the short version of it is that you have to have, a candidate has to show a certain amount of training. They have to show a certain amount of experience. They have to comply with a series of ethics and standards of professionalism. And finally, once they've done all that, then they can sit and they need to pass an exam, and then they get this certification. This is a recognition, just like a professional licensure has the same set of requirements. So experience, training, and demonstration through an exam. And this certification recognizes the capability and achievements of these job candidates. So people come in with a specific set of demonstrated capability. So for employers, that's really valuable. For candidates, it shows that you have the card that shows you how to succeed. So it's good for employers, it's good for candidates, and it's different than if I go and complete a class of a program of training and get a certificate that shows that I've done that. And there's a bunch of other requirements in there as well, but we don't need to go into those today. Let's go to the next page. What is out there today? This is a good question. There's a lot of people that have training programs and more, by and large, certificate programs out there today, but there's nothing that is on the line of what we need today for a high performance building operation professional. And this is a diagram actually taken from the General Services Administration. General Services Administration is the US government's landlord. They manage billions of square feet of space. And this is a chart that I borrowed from their website. GSA actually manages a program called FedSat. It's a training requirement that the federal government has for all building operators. It's a great program, but it doesn't get much funding, and the GSA runs it. But this is something they went out to look at different roles of people. So in this case, facility managers, energy managers, building operators, and by different levels of skills. And they looked at what training they saw out there today. I would argue, and Peter and I have argued this many times, that almost everything in here may not be correct. But if we look at what they found that's out there today for building operations, there's a red box here for the ASHRAE certification, not certificate, which is great for operations professionals. ASHRAE has a pretty okay program here. It's been going on for 5 years. So far, they've certified 30 people worldwide in it. It hasn't been tremendously well subscribed yet. And then we see 4 other blocks for building operations. 2 sets of classes as part of the Building Operation Certification Program, BOC, and 2 boxes from the Building Operators and Managers International, BOMI. These are all 4 of these boxes are certificates. The BOC program, great program for doing a little bit of retraining for people that are out in the field. You come in, you take a class or a series of classes, and you get a certificate. Very, very nice program. But it doesn't get people ready to enter the field. They do have a new certification, but most folks aren't going through that. And it really isn't, it's a good thing for retraining of incumbents. And the BOMI thing is the exact same thing. The BOMI, by the way, SMC, SMT stands for System Management Certificate, and the other one is System Maintenance Technician. None of these are people getting ready to enter the field at the level that we have identified through the DACM and through the JTA that Peter had mentioned earlier. So there are a few things out there, but they're not the level of rigor or training or professionalism that we think is needed in order to elevate the field. Let's go to my final slide, Ted. So what is Best Center doing with the high performance building operators professional? A number of things. As Peter mentioned, well, we've completed the work on the job task analysis in the JTA. These are documents that go in and analyze what's going on. We've convened the scheme committee, and Ted and I are members of this, and this is a large process that goes through and defines the requirements and how this gets done, and what the code of standards and ethics and everything else is. The Laney has actually piloted this out. They've done a whole series of training for incumbent workers in the state of California and had a lot of success and gotten a lot of feedback on what works and what doesn't work. The next steps that we're working on right now are fourfold. We're working on curriculum guidance, which Ted is going to talk some more about. We're working on development of the exam, which was a big process. And the third piece is we're working on building an organization that will manage these certifications. And if you have interest in this, please let Peter know or let me know. This new organization will have a whole laundry list of tasks to do, including providing education and marketing for potential candidates, working with community colleges, working with union programs, working with employers, working to go out and helping to educate people on the what and the why, and why you would want to vie for and be part of the certification. And then all of this fits into the formal launch of the HPBOP. Yes, sir.
Paul, just a quick item. If you are anyone in this meeting is interested in being considered as a test question writer, please let us know. We are going to be starting that very quickly with Ohio State University, SEAT, and Jim Austin. And if you are interested, please let us know. Thank you.
I see we have Jim on the call with us today too. So
yeah.
With that, I'm going to turn this over to Ted, and Ted's going to talk a little bit about the curriculum side.
Thanks, Paul. My introduction, I said I was with Milwaukee Area Technical College earlier this morning, and I do teach. I've been teaching for a better part of a decade full-time at a tech college. However, the previous 30 plus years, I was doing work out in industry, primarily doing consulting work around energy efficiency and also facilities management. So I've been through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of buildings. And that's a lot of the information I bring into the table here to help out with this group to put together this certification process. So what I'm going to talk about right now is what we've been doing as far as developing some curriculum guidance. And as far as that is concerned, both Paul and Peter talked to the fact that this is a certification that is trying to elevate the level of what our building engineers are doing today so that they can take on the requirements of all this new technology, all these changes with environment, all these changes with indoor environmental air quality, this high performance building aspect, helping to drive it towards net zero. So a lot of what we have in here is crossing over all those different categories. And so part of what HPBOP does is to cover a broad range of areas, pulling not just working on one piece of equipment at that moment in time, but when somebody's doing that, to tie it into everything else. And so a lot of what we're doing in developing curriculum guidance is geared towards that. The other aspect of this curriculum guidance, and I guess I'll talk through this slide here, we're aligning it with that job task analysis that Peter mentioned earlier. So we're drawing from that to develop guidance for colleges to go ahead and develop courses and programs around this. So the intent here is that we want to train people, new people for this field, because that's going to help address this loss of current people who are retiring or jobbing out of operations at the moment. And this is a huge issue. Here in Wisconsin, there's a group of healthcare facilities, different providers that are teaming together to address this very issue within building operations. And you don't often see competing entities. These are competing healthcare industry people. In our case, it's an organization called Aurora, another one called Wheaton Franciscan, things like that. They're actually teaming together so that they can build a workforce up, that they're not constantly just scavenging from other firms to get their employees. This training is really needed for that. And so we're trying to target a training that is based upon a long-term commitment where people are sitting in a lab, working on equipment and learning this over years rather than just say a couple week period of time that you often get with the training. The curriculum supports the develop knowledge and skills aligned with that HPBOP certification, which we've been working on through the scheme committee and the job task analysis. So this guidance will help colleges to address that. And the main other aspect is not prescriptive. We're not saying, oh, you have to take these steps to remedy this situation. It's kind of covering, again, that broad scope of things so that somebody's not just focused on a particular item. And this allows for the colleges to develop their own curriculum in which they're going to develop lesson plans and labs geared towards this to help support this curriculum guidance that will get them to the point where they can sit and take the exam. We've broken it down for curriculum guidance into two areas. There's these foundational knowledge and skills, which really provides a baseline, and then this higher level knowledge and skills. So within the baseline, there's a number of things that are very similar to what building operators do today. But there's also other areas that provide this broader base, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then the higher level knowledge and skills really has to do with trying to pull things together that you see within commissioning and a bunch of other areas that have been developing over the past 10, 20 years. So getting foundational, there's 4 categories that we currently have for this. One's mechanical systems, electrical systems and foundations, information technology, which it sounds like IT, right? But really it's a matter of being able to use these different technologies we have, often related to computers, for finding information on the internet, using different types of word processors, being able to save this information in PDFs and other formats, and also being able to know where to save it, how to save it. So there's a lot of information that's needed to be provided to the students so that they can use the systems, because a lot of what's going into HPBOP is a matter of documenting, matter of working with computers, working with BAS systems that requires this base of information technology skills. And then energy literacy. This isn't just energy from standpoint of natural gas and coal. We're going and suggesting to take it back a little bit to understanding what is energy and trying to start from that as a base to develop an curriculum around. So next one, this is in the higher level knowledge and skills. We have 7 different areas, and I see that I'm starting to get towards the end of my time here, so I'll kind of skip over this lightly. But there's 7 of them. We're looking at building systems for HPBOP techs. You see that's very similar to the one for Mechanical Systems Foundation, but Mechanical Systems Foundation is giving them the understanding of what mechanical systems are, right? And this one here, building systems, is looking at it from a overall system and building facility standpoint. It goes into a lot more detail. Systems approach to environmental management. This was very important during the previous presentations today, that environmental management is going to be a huge issue from this point going forward. And our building operators, our building engineers, our building technicians, people who are going to be high performance building operators, operations professionals, need to have this background on environment to be able to get their buildings to that high performing aspect, that be comfortable and safe for their occupants. Development of systems manuals, this documentation process is really critical to ensuring that buildings continue to operate at a high level. Having that information relatively at your fingertips is critical. And there's building automation systems, a whole mess of different areas in there that we need to be imparting upon the students so that they're more familiar with how to use that information, how to gather data, how to trend information, analyze it, and use it to change how the building is being controlled, right down to possibly in programming the control systems. Energy conservation, this has been around for quite a while. Matter of fact, this is where a large portion of my professional career has been, in doing energy audits, helping implement measures, and getting the verification, measurement verification of it after the fact. Commissioning systems, there's been a lot of notes to that earlier today, that all these steps people are taking to mitigate air quality in buildings, these things have to be commissioned so they're functioning properly. And this is commissioned, it's just not what a contractor says where, oh yeah, we commissioned the controls. Well, no, you probably just started it up. You really did commission it. This is actually going through the whole process so they understand it, and that the building operator, whether they're actually the ones doing the commissioning process or overseeing or working with a commissioning authority on it, they understand it enough that they can make it as effective as possible to bring it into the organization. So it's kind of part of their ongoing processes. Then the last part is, excuse me, continuous quality improvement for HPBOP. And this is a process of taking everything we just talked about and getting it to the point where it's just generally being part of the day-to-day operations, integrating it into computerized maintenance management systems, getting it as part of what they do for daily checks and things like that. So it's all these here, it's a higher level than what we currently think of when we think of a building operator. And that's why we're promoting the fact that they're actually building engineers, building technicians, high performance building operations professionals. And let me see, I'm gonna just kind of skip over these real quickly because I have 3 more slides. Building systems for HPBOP technicians. This goes into a little bit more detail of one of these steps here, or one of these items here. And just to give you an idea, when we talk about CMMS, which is computerized maintenance management systems, using that information that's in there to help them develop budgets. You want to have that person reviewing cooling and heating systems for capacity needs, optimal efficiency, use the BAS to assist with looking at these systems, including trending, and have them be able to list efficiencies as a result of what they're doing with their reviews. So that's just an example of the different type of things we're given for curriculum guidance on the building systems side. And the other one is BAS systems, and there's a whole litany of things, and probably most of us here are familiar with them, but just being able to look at the system, evaluate overrides, and I'll just go for the override example, find them, review them, determine reason for, and establish when it can be safely released. So with that, I'm going to go to my last slide. Summary of why it's needed, why HPBOP is needed. Building systems are more complex and technology dependent. So it's not as simple as just going and tightening a belt anymore. There's a whole lot of other things that need to be considered, and we want to get that into the view of what the high performance building operator is doing so that they don't just do it in a vacuum. Sequences of operations are getting increasingly complex, and with ASHRAE 36 coming out, which is a guideline right now. It's a guideline right now, right, Paul?
Yes, sir.
And it's hopefully eventually be a standard that will help to drive energy efficiency. There's increasing demands for energy conservation, decarbonization, and other environmental mitigation. And this is a big drive. I know even at my own college right now, we're lucky enough to have an energy manager and a sustainability director that are helping to drive MATC towards net zero carbon by 2030. Doing that type of effort is really difficult, and you need a concerted effort, and having HPBOP on board will help with doing that. Education and training of building operators right now, it's just not keeping up. And Paul alluded to why that is, and maybe it was Peter too, where it's hard to take somebody out of their job for days at a time and have them focus on the training. It's just a difficult task. It requires more rigorous training and skills for both new entrants and incumbent workers. And we need to professionalize this. We need to recognize these people for who they are as professionals in their field. And this needs to be done both in title, pay, and in what they do day in, day out. So with that, I'm going to open up to any last comments from Paul or Peter, and then we can have questions.
You know, I think we've got a few minutes left. Maybe we have a few questions in the chat here. Maybe we should take those.
All right.
I can take this first one because I've been reading it while you've been talking. So
yeah, thank you. You put me on the spot there for a second.
Yeah, a question here about you know, specific things that may require licensing, and the example here is electricians, but you may have the same challenge with fire and life safety systems. You may have the same challenge with plumbing systems. There are some things that do require, particularly whether it's a state licensing issue or even a union issue, that may require some specific training and some specific certifications. And electricians is a good example of that. Our view of it is that the HPBOP has an understanding of all of these pieces. They know the basics. Are they qualified to go in and rewire an electrical panel? Not necessarily, not unless they've been trained and are properly certified and licensed to do that as a maintenance electrician. So our view is that they would understand electricity, they would understand an electrical panel, but they're not necessarily having every single skill. So we view that it's important for them to have that understanding from a systems perspective, particularly how it impacts the performance of the building. But yeah, this is an issue. I mean, if you do have something that's specific to a certain local or state requirement, you still have to meet those requirements. And I think electrical work's a good example of that because it's a real safety issue.
And I think that another important part of this is that, like Peter mentioned, there's 500 different tasks or competencies that GSA came up with. And for this HPBOP person, they will draw upon their experience where they have good expertise, if they are a licensed electrician, to do that type of thing. But we want them to be aware of it so that they can be able to influence the outsourcing of these different jobs that are required and oversee it reasonably. So that's another thing that we want to impart with the training, is that they know when and when not to put their hands into it.
Yeah, as an example, we wrestled in the scheme committee with several different things that were related around audits, like an energy audit, for example. We definitely wanted them to understand that process and how to run the process, but we recognize that they may elect to bring in somebody else that does some of that process and they would participate in it. The other challenge we have is that when we talk to a lot of building owners and they describe to us what they wanted from the building operator, it started to sound like Superman after a while. They had to know everything and have perfect expertise and understanding. And in reality, they're going to be great managers. They're going to know where to find expertise. They're going to know how to allocate things. We're also realizing that some of the most important skills that they're going to have are interpersonal skills. Their skills in working with tenants and occupants and in team members. Those are as important in many cases, or maybe even more important than the technical skills. So we need to be helping them out with all of those things.
Okay, any other questions you see there?
I see Larry telling us we have a minute left.
Well,
so I'll throw out a question, and if
Yes,
we
sir.
don't have time, that's fine. But you know, I think one kind of logical question is like, again, how the curriculum and the curriculum guidance will lead to the KSAs being weighted in various areas, right? Does the DACM, let's just say 20% relates to energy management, right? Does that mean then that 20% of, say, classroom time would be spent on that? How do you begin to kind of map that out?
Well, Larry, I don't think there's a one-to-one relationship. Certainly, energy management is going to be part of the curriculum. It's going to be part of what people are learning. Everything from energy literacy to energy conservation to energy utilization. It's going to be part of their knowledge and skill set. Certainly, weighting will come into play a little bit, but weighting has literally 100 different topics with some subtle weighting, and it's not necessarily, we can't follow that with that level of detail. It's not, so to speak, a difference that makes a difference. We're looking for the larger components of what the curriculum should be. And energy conservation, energy efficiency, energy management are part of that, definitely.
But a lot of the curriculum is in getting people ready to learn the next part. So it's progressive as well.
Yeah.
And it's all integrated. I mean, that's one thing we found when running the pilots is that everything is interconnected, and it's really hard to unwind it or untangle it. You got to try to teach it in a way that everything's connected. So that's the way our buildings are. And that's the way they're going to be high performing buildings.
And we also realize that a lot of buildings and building operation practices are regional, and the curriculum has that flexibility. If you need something different taught in South Florida than you need taught in Minnesota, you can have that emphasis. And that's one of the beauties of our system.
Okay.
Now, before we sign off, I just want to encourage any attendees, send questions to our panelists. I also support the certification effort, so you may send questions to me as well.
Larry's actually in charge of it, so yeah, he's the guy.
in charge of calling time. There you go. All right.